I flew from Washington, D.C. to California, where Professor Mazet runs the One Health Institute at the University of California, Davis School of Veterinary Medicine. It's amazing to me, the animal linkage to the human population. So talk to me about that spark, because you got into veterinary medicine, but then you see this link.
Sure.
How does that kind of grow into where we are today?
Well, for me, it was really, we live in California in this coastal community, and I was working to save sea otters, actually, and what do they eat? They eat sushi. And I was finding these diseases that come from human populations and people's pets that move into the coastal communities. And I thought, oh my goodness, well, little kids who are out with their parents eating sushi also are very susceptible to these things. People with immunocompromised systems, like living with HIV/AIDS, are very sensitive. And I thought, oh, we have to do something. And that really pushed my career into what we call One Health, where we think about the connections, humans, animals, plants, and the environment. And I think that people don't remember that HIV actually is a spillover event. And most of the diseases that we have that surprise us, take us by storm, even cause epidemics and pandemics, are those that spill over from animals.
One of the quotes I love from you, and I want you to kind of maybe riff off this, is looking into the crystal ball, and the crystal ball is murky. Talk to us about that whole concept, because I think when you talk in euphemisms like that, it helps people to really clearly understand.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be nice? I think if just for that visual, we think about our fairy tales and the cloud kind of clears in the crystal ball. Our cloud's not clearing in that crystal ball because there's so much unknown, especially in viruses. We know a lot about bacteria. We're able to pick up and understand new bacteria when they start to cause big problems, like people have been seeing. And we're still having problems with those bacteria, but we're just eons beyond where we are with viruses, because why? I don't know. They've been harder to study, but technology has changed. The way we approach these kinds of problems have changed, and it's time that we understand the world of viruses that are the things that tend to cause the diseases that spark and fly across the world quickly, tend to be these viruses. And so we really now can attack that, but it's just a little bit outside of the way we've approached medicine and health in the past. And I think if we can get that information, that knowledge, we can start to clear that smoke. We can't keep doing the same things over and over again. We can't keep responding to epidemics by flying in, if there's a vaccine, bringing the vaccine after the epidemic is almost over. We need to get in front of these problems and understand them better. And we can't do that if we don't bring the animal groups together with the human health groups to say, okay, these things are living along, bubbling along in their natural hosts, not causing their hosts to be too sick. But as we grow our human populations, we push out into wild environments, or we push into this situation where our urban environments are taking over huge areas and the animals have no choice but to live with us. We are starting to live in this close contact with them. And if we don't understand better across species and the environmental drivers that push things to be just a virus into being a disease, we're not going to ever change. We're just going to be responding after the fact to these horrible outbreaks. We lose lives, we lose billions of dollars every time that happens.
Jonna earned her doctorate of veterinary medicine, master of preventative medicine, and her PhD in epidemiology from the University of California, Davis. She also founded California's Oiled Wildlife Care Network, a wildlife emergency management system model that's used throughout the world. But Jonna's primary mission is to detect viruses before they blow up into epidemics.
So we have the controls.
That means studying across species. It's a unique approach, one not always fully supported. It's a sea change in many respects because everything's on the back end. And you're saying let's work on the front end.
I
So
am.
how well was that received initially?
I think, well, first of all, there's a building momentum in the scientific community, the policy community, the health delivery community that we need to make this sea change. And so it's almost like a grassroots movement, and getting the folks sort of that control resources to understand that is a harder push, because of course policymakers want to respond to their constituents, and they're going to respond to what is causing them current health problems, or what is causing them to not be economically as in a good condition as they'd like to be. So it's easier to respond and say, oh my gosh, something's coming, I'm afraid, let's take care of it now with the resources, than it is to say, let's get in front of this, because that feels like it's not an emergency. The problem is, if we keep doing it that way, more and more people die than need to die. And again, we spend so many more dollars than we need to, because we don't know what we're handling. When you go to your doctor and you feel sick, your doctor takes samples and checks off. Everybody gets that little piece of paper, or now it's computerized, but they check the boxes. Do this test, do this test, do this test. There's no test on there for please find everything else. Please find what we don't know yet. Please find the virus that's actually probably making you sick today. There's no box for that. We want to change that. And then the time is now. It's possible.
The interesting thing, when you come up with this concept, I have a phrase in my profession, preconceived notion news.
Yeah.
You set out on a story. I set out on this interview. I think you're going to say this or that. I try and anticipate. But it's always fun because you never know where the journey's going to take you. So you start out with this whole concept. What were some of the surprises along the way?
I think the biggest surprises are we worked really closely with communities, and what we expected as health professionals, as scientists, to be their issues, their problems, were not at all what we thought when we went there. I can tell you a story. We've been recently working in the 3 most horribly Ebola affected countries in West Africa. We started sort of at the end of the outbreak and continue on today. And some of the surprises are things like not necessarily, we went there to find the natural evolutionary hosts of Ebola viruses so that we could help the communities protect themselves from contact with those hosts. But what the communities really said was they couldn't even talk about Ebola. They couldn't say the word because they were so traumatized by what happened to them. They had no entree to dealing with that stress and that devastation and that trauma. And having the scientists there and talking about the white suits, not because we're coming to take your family member away, but because we want to help you figure out how to reduce your risk, give them an entry to dealing with and starting to heal, because they could talk about Ebola again, but talk about it in a more objective way, a positive way. We want to make a difference. We want to do something more in a prospective manner than just dealing with our grief.
The 2014 to 2016 Ebola outbreak in West Africa was the largest and most complex since the virus was discovered in 1976. A toddler from a remote village in Guinea is believed to have been West Africa's first case of Ebola. Currently, the Democratic Republic of Congo is dealing with the world's second largest Ebola epidemic on record. In 2019, the World Health Organization says more than 2,000 people died. The potential for this lethal virus to cross international borders is extremely high and cause for concern. Ebola doesn't know boundaries. It can move from this country to that country. It went to 6 countries. It even came here to the United States. And I don't think people think about that. So What are some of the messages you would convey to our audience about that?
I mean, we are all citizens of this planet, and we're one big global community. Things move. We're doing mathematical modeling and statistical modeling studies. We can show that from that village in Guinea, it's less than 48 hours that it can get here. That's how connected the world is. I think that's changed the mindset of people in the most developed countries, because we used to feel protected. We didn't used to worry so much about Ebola because we thought that's something that happens in small villages and those people don't leave there and it doesn't really get out. That was a mistake we made, right? Our own naivete allowed something terrible to happen in West Africa because we didn't expect it there. This is exactly what we're trying to change with the PREDICT project and beyond, is that if we understand where viruses are, if we understand what they are and the risks of how to get them, first of all, we can help those communities not get them, but some spillover is going to happen. Some people are going to get sick, but we can also enable those countries to have the technologies, the methods that are not that expensive anymore to diagnose on site, so they don't have to wait to put in control measures. They don't have to wait for the international community to swoop in and help. They can take control, and that helps us here. Saves us money, saves us lives, and it keeps things sort of controlled where they're spilling over as opposed to spreading across the world quickly. In the places where this was happening, they were expecting a different disease. They didn't have the information to understand that they might have Ebola Zaire in their communities. We actually, as a scientific community, did know that, unfortunately. We had, from our own amazing group, we had modelers who had made a risk map of the likelihood of emergence, and the spot, literally the spot where the spillover event is thought to have happened was bright red on our map. Now, that spot was basically coming from some factors including population growth, biodiversity, all of these things. We have even better maps now because we can start to put the hosts. So we know the hosts of some of these viruses live in that area. So even if you didn't know you had the virus, if you know you have the host, you should expect that virus, right? So we're improving those maps and the lists of what people should be worried about so that they can, again, be more ready. Now, there's a long way to go. We've discovered about 1,000 viruses. We think there's 50 times that, maybe 500 times that out there left to discover, things that could spill over and make us sick. But it's not just the discovery, because as we're collecting the information and we understand what puts people at risk, those same behaviors put people at risk for multiple different ones. So you don't necessarily need every piece of information, and you don't need it from every location. If we work together, again, as a global community, we can pull this data and really make it more powerful for a lot less money, less than it costs for one big response.
Response to that 2013 Ebola outbreak, which ultimately claimed more than 11,000 lives, was complicated by a combination of unique factors. Since then, researchers have learned that by partnering with a strong, efficient local effort during the early phase of an outbreak, an epidemic could be prevented. So those teams fan out. Mm-hmm. Describe for us what they do.
So we work in the countries, we find the best partners, the ones that are those motivated ones that will work so hard to make it happen. We usually have human health partners, animal health partners, field ecology partners, biology partners, public health partners, and we actually build a joint team that has surveillance people that go out into the field and collect samples, but those people have to be supported by biosafety teams, right? So you can't just go out into the community and be safe if you're looking for the most dangerous viruses. You have to understand how to be safe. So you have to understand PPE, personal protective equipment, the white suits. Well, you can't just wear a white suit in a community, especially if it's been traumatized by a previous outbreak, because they're scared that you're coming there because something bad is happening or maybe even conspiracy theories start. So you have to have the social scientists that go with you, talk to the communities, engage with the leadership of those communities to say, this is why we're here, this is what we're doing, is that okay? Will you work with us? Then you can start. So there's a lot of background work that happens, but then you get the community and they're motivated too. So they're all on their cell phones, they're all saying, come over here, there's an interface where people are interacting with bats, or the monkeys raid this market and we really want to make sure the monkeys aren't bringing something in and contaminating the food. So you instantly have this community all working together, kind of citizen science. That's the field part, and it is logistically difficult. I have photos I could share with you where people are bringing their liquid nitrogen tanks and all their sampling gear in a little canoe to get out to those villages, paddling it across. So I'm telling you, people are overcoming huge obstacles because they believe in the mission. They believe it's time to do things differently. Then in the laboratories, we have to find the partners that, first of all, have laboratories. We couldn't build them, and are willing to start to invest and take a turn from their regular path of what they were charged to do to make a change in the world. And so we work with those laboratories. Our teams here in this lab go and train. Their people come and learn and bring technologies and things, lessons learned from their labs about doing this in some of the hardest places to do it. And then we do it by internet, really. These guys collaborate and work on fixing equipment, by Zoom, by Skype, okay, twist this, turn that, So it really becomes a connected community. That data then needs to get into a bioinformatics pipeline. So we have the statisticians working together. So you can see how it gets expensive very quickly, but it's also, as I said, less expensive than the outbreak, but even so, I think the bang for the buck of what you're getting, because these people are working so hard, overtime for free, basically, to make this happen, is amazing. And then the modelers take that data and make the better maps, which is what we really need. We need the risk factors, we need the mitigation, we need to help the communities protect themselves.
Because of the global movement of animals, whether through natural migration as a food source or through the pet trade, a wide range of pathogens are dispersed at an extraordinary rate. For example, researchers found evidence that the 2003 epidemic of SARS, or severe acute respiratory syndrome, started in China when the virus spread from small mammals to people. So to someone watching this, they might say, why is it important to study animals? And you would say?
I care about the animals myself, but in addition to that, let's say you don't care about the beauty and the biodiversity of the planet. I don't think there's many people who would say that, but just your primary thing has to be, I have to take care of my family, right? And this is taking care of your family. This is helping your physician be ready and able to check a box to take care of you, because your neighbor might have just come from all of these different places and inadvertently brought something with them. Our planet's climate is changing, and with those changes, we have changes in things, vectors, the bugs, frankly, that carry some of these diseases. And so where we didn't used to have certain mosquitoes or other kinds of bugs that carried certain viruses, we do have them again. So this is coming to your neighborhood, I'm sorry to say, but we can do something about it. If we clear that fog, we can do something about it. We can be ready, and we can jump into action quickly, and we can save lives.
How hard is it to clear the fog? I mean, it's a long-term project?
It is a long-term process, but I guess that you asked me what's surprising. And another thing that surprises me is, first of all, that we can do it. I think when you first start, you're like, this is ambitious. I think I can do it, but can we? And by working together, all these amazing people from different disciplines pulling together, we did it. We figured out a way inexpensively to put in some of the least resourced places in the world, the capacity to detect and discover virus and to understand all those risk factors around the spillover potential so that they could take the control of those things into their own hands. We also were able to connect those communities now with the technological advances in communication so that we can, all of us, be connected as a cohort, a cadre of people ready and able to jump into action. So I know hundreds of people in all of these places, and they all have cell phones, and we're all connected, and we're connected with the Global Health International organizations who are ready and able to help. So we're no longer waiting weeks, months. We're finding out almost instantaneously that there are strange things going on, and we need to jump into action.
Located a couple miles from the UC Davis campus is the California Raptor Center, a rehabilitation center for injured birds. So here we are at the California Raptor Center, and this ties into this in what way?
Yeah, welcome. We have our researchers here and all over the world work across these kinds of systems. They work on wildlife that need help, like the ones here at the Raptor Center. Also, the birds here are used for education, and they help us remember that we're connected to all places around the world. These birds can migrate thousands and thousands of miles, and with them they can bring along things like avian influenza and things like that as they migrate.
Tracking viruses is a global effort. Scientists conduct field research in faraway places on multiple species, all in hopes of discovering and preventing the next pandemic. So far, Jonna and her team have discovered about 1,000 viruses in animals and believe there are even more to dig up. When you set out on this project, you suspect you're going to hit a big number. Did that surprise you? And talk to us about the process. How do you come across these discoveries? How does it happen?
I mean, I think when we started, we were charged with that goal. I mean, it was a very lofty goal. You know, please find all the viruses and stop them from spilling over. Thank you very much. You know, and we're like, oh, wow, well, there are no diagnostic tests for this, so we have to figure out some other way. Most of the technology to do that is very expensive and only in a few laboratories around the world at that time, 10 years ago. Things have changed quite a lot. So we have to actually find even a cheaper way than that, and hopefully it's as good or better than that. And so I was surprised that we were able to find that. Our virological team from here, Davis and Columbia, are amazing, and really helped us move the needle on that one. You know, I think we thought we would find virus, but we were really trying to build infrastructure and capacity at the same time. So what surprises me is how hard everyone was willing to work to do this. So people that were paid a little bit worked like they were paid a lot because everybody's motivated to make this happen. I mean, it really is a higher order goal. And I think when I talk to my government colleagues and they say, well, you got so much done, I say, thank you. But first of all, not me. It's all of us. And second of all, it's because we would do this anyway. Like, it's really things that we're trying, our group, the hundreds of people that have been working on this, want to do this, and we will fight and work to do this whether we get paid or not. We can just make it happen if there's some resources backing it.